From the world headquarters of Fox News, it's The Kelly File with Megyn Kelly.
Well, last night on this program, we had a thoughtful discussion about free speech and American values, and why our commitment to liberty as a nation requires everyone to stand up for the rights of those speaking even the most offensive of words. It's not about aligning yourself with the message. It's about defending a core American principle. First Amendment scholar Eugene Volokh explained how not only did the folks organizing a Draw Muhammad event down in Texas have the legal right to do it, which some had questioned, but how what they did was actually important and of real value because it was an act of defiance. Defiance toward those radical Muslim factions who mean to impose their moral code on us, namely that certain figures may not be drawn or parodied on pain of death. What happened in Texas is a group said no. You don't control speech in this country, even if a religion may find that speech offensive. Sure enough, the jihadis showed up with AK-47s and tried to murder everyone there. Now some suggest the risk with such an event is that our Muslim nation allies might be less inclined to fight the jihad if they see some group in America hold a private event like this one. So private citizens shouldn't do offensive things even behind closed doors now, lest they cause offense. Because our friends in Egypt might get ticked off. But the fact is, we don't compromise America's bedrock principles just to make other nations like us more. Just as we do not require them to change their values before we fight a common enemy. Otherwise, Egypt's whole "we will kill you for leaving Islam" commitment might be a bit of a deal breaker. The bottom line here is that some in this country have been so busy trying to figure out how to avoid causing any religion any offense, they have forgotten what is offensive to Americans, namely those who would trample on our core ideals. In America, we stand for liberty and freedom to offend, to provoke, to persuade, and to defy. Alan Dershowitz is a Harvard Law professor emeritus and author of Taking the Stand, My Life in the Law. And Rich Lowry is the editor of National Review, a syndicated columnist and a Fox News contributor. Alan, let me start with you. Let
me start with you first and just applaud your statement. It was fantastic. It is the paradigm of the way Americans have to look at our freedoms and our First Amendment. Jefferson would have been proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow, that's high praise. But now, I mean, I think on this show last night, we went through it with Eugene Volokh, and there's not a more respected First Amendment scholar who made very clear this is free speech, what happened down in Texas, even if you don't like the speech. But he took it a step further and said the speech is valuable, and it should have been done. So to those who say you shouldn't, he took that on. You agree with that?
Right. Look, the speech is tasteless, it's provocative, but it has a value because it's making the statement that violent extremists aren't going to set the boundaries of free speech in this country. Look, this is a country where literally nothing is sacred. And if we're going to accept an assassin's veto in this case, we're going to say the only exception is the image of Muhammad. And that's just perverse, and that's not what this country is about, and that's not the way it should work.
It's like some people want to look at what's offensive to some in the Muslim world. They don't like you to draw the Prophet Muhammad and say, okay, that will be our value too. Well, that is not the value of most Americans. And if they want to draw Muhammad, they can.
Oh, no, I agree. Look, everything that the critics of what Geller has said could be said about Martin Luther King. No, I don't want to make any comparisons between the two of them, morally or legally.
Specifically.
But from a constitutional law point of view, there's no difference. Martin Luther King picked some of the cities he went to precisely in order to provoke and bring out the racists and show what kind of violent people they are so the world could see what was wrong with Jim Crow. It's part of the American tradition to provoke so that the world can see.
Right.
And, you know, there is some value, but I think one has to remember the most important part of this is there's only one group in the world today that threatens to kill people who offend them, and that is radical Muslims. And they don't need Geller to do it. They issued fatwas against Salman Rushdie.
Right.
They issued a fatwa and then murdered Theo Van Gogh. You know, Jews and Christians don't go after and threaten to kill Farrakhan when he makes his outrageously anti-Semitic and anti-Christian statements. They don't do it to other groups, and we just cannot accept the veto by threatened extreme violence.
So why, Rich, have we seen so many in the media rush to condemn Pam Geller and say almost nothing about the two jihadis who tried to murder her and everyone there?
Yeah, they'll say there's hate in Texas, and they're talking about her, and not ISIS. And
Why?
they'll directly compare her to ISIS. Well, they don't like her, and they just don't like the idea of offending Muslims. And look, the left in this country for decades has taught us you should shock the bourgeoisie, you should push the envelope in your art and your commentary, and you should literally trample on every single piety, except for this one. And I want to actually step up and underline something Alan was saying and defend the Muslim community, because the average Muslim in America is not sitting plotting revenge because someone is drawing Muhammad in Garland, Texas.
And the notion that Egypt or Jordan, they're going to abandon us in our fight against ISIS because Pam Geller has
So the sensibilities we're talking about are the sensibilities of ISIS and the extremist. And those are exactly the sensibilities you should be willing to trample on.
What we've heard in recent days, though, is even some on the Christian right saying, you know, they don't like to have their religion insulted. You know, we saw the Jesus Christ immersed in urine. They don't like that, and so they think we're going down a dangerous road if we start offending other religions. But does that, I mean, while they may be offended, does that really get to the issue here? Look,
they can try to persuade us not to do that. They can use the marketplace of ideas. The difference is that radical Muslims, and I'm only talking about radical censorian Muslims, not all of them, they're the only group that says, if you offend us, we will issue a fatwa and we will kill you. We will murder you.
Well, this is why the point I was making last night on the air was maybe there's room for a debate in this country about whether that kind of provocative speech is appropriate or breaches a decorum. But really, can we wait until the crime scene is cleared first? This group came under attack by two jihadis who wanted to murder them all. But for the quick thinking of a police officer down there who single-handedly took them out, we could have had dozens dead. So shouldn't they be the focus right now?
You think there'd be universal sentiment behind that idea, and there just hasn't been, and we've seen it in the debate over the attack in France as well, where you have some very famous writers saying, you know what, Charlie Hebdo, they were in the wrong, they were out of bounds, there should be an assassin's veto, where if you're going to do or write something that makes people want to kill you, shut up.
Give you the last word.
And we're going to have to start by looking at what imams are preaching today in their mosques. And I haven't heard very much from the radical Muslims who complain that they were offended. What about what's going on in mosques today, where they preach anti-Semitism, anti-Christianity? The difference is we don't kill them when they do that. We condemn them, we argue with them, and there's a big difference between having a marketplace of ideas and a marketplace that's dominated by rifles and guns and attempts to kill.
Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Megan. Thomas Jefferson's very happy tonight.
Taking your thoughts now at Facebook.com/The Kelly File and on Twitter @Megyn Kelly. Well, Tom Brady is arguably one of the most successful quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. That's what they tell me. And up next, we will show you what he did tonight when confronted about allegations that he was a cheater and a liar. Brian Kilmeade's here on that and some other great stories. Don't miss him.